Welcome to POG's second reading of our 30th year of making poetry happen in Tucson. But I'm not the MC of POG. I'm just here to let everybody know that this place is called Wave Archive. Usually that name means something because there's a whole wall of waves, as some of you may know, some don't know. But right now, as you can see, there is an exhibit up that's called Border Signals. And this is an exhibit with that's a kind of collaboration between three artists, Johanna Skibsrud, a writer and poet, the visual artist and musician Robert Henderson, who created all the pieces that you see, as well as the photographer David Taylor, who has a video piece playing when the exhibit is up. The exhibit's going to be open this weekend, and on Sunday the 19th will be the closing night, and the artists themselves will talk about sort of the work behind the exhibit, which revolves around an action or a happening that happened last fall in November at the border that involved poetry and readings from folks who are in the detained archive, who have been detained at the border and who are sort of telling their stories. Four folks will be visiting to talk about the work. Paco Cantu, who's a writer in town and also the kind of one of the main curators and keepers of the detained archive. Russ McSpadden, who is the Southwest Conservatory conservation advocate for the Center for Biological Diversity. Astrid Riley, who works at the Florence Immigrant Project, and Dora Rodriguez, who founded Salvavision and who is a writer and memoirist herself. It's going to be a really great night, and that's happening on Sunday. On Saturday, tomorrow, there's going to be some experimental music, the bread and butter of this space, maybe, other than poetry, which is, as I think we'll think about tonight, its own form of experimental music. And sound making, that's right. And so two visiting folks will be coming through town. Ethan Campa, percussionist and noisemaker, R.M. Francis, who's coming from Seattle, and then our local group will be Group Chat. So it's going to be a good night of sound making. So all to say, Wave Archive, busy stuff happening. The bathrooms are through that door, right or left. This is a space that's open to the community, that we want to do cool experimental things. So if any of you ever have ideas for what we should do in this space, please be in touch with us. I'm now going to welcome Cynthia Miller, who will be our MC. Thank you.
There's more chairs over the stairs. I'm stretching my Thank you, John. Thank you. Thank you for coming. You know, this is such a busy time of year, and I appreciate you voting to come here and not the four other things that you also thought about doing tonight, because it is like that. October to March, Tucson, perfect weather, just started, and just a lovely time to get together with your friends and get out. This is the Harvest Festival for us 21st century folks. Anyway, my name is Cynthia, and I'm mostly a painter, sometimes a poet, and I've been with POG for a number of years, not quite 30, as Charles and Tenny have been, but maybe 29 and a half. And we've had the good fortune of having so many wonderful poets come through here, and some of them more than once. So I'm very happy that tonight we have Will Alexander and Stephen Ratcliffe for your listening pleasure. And I hope that it inspires you with your writing and thinking and words on parade in your head at any given time. You can't not do that. We are thinking machines. Anyway, I want to thank, of course, all of you for coming. The Arizona Commission on the Arts, which helps support our program, Tax Press, the Wave Archive, which is doing wonderful, amazing things in this small space, and the Goddess, and anything that holds you together while our country goes to rack and ruin. So thank those things, take part, be your own agency, make art, write write songs, dance, love each other. That's called survival. Okay? Otherwise, you're going to feel like you just got mowed over, which is also happening. All right, what else can I say? I think this is going to be a wonderful, wonderful reading, and I'm so happy to share it with you. So thank you again for coming. We like to honor the native influences of our area. I wish they were taking over. That's a religion I can get behind, maybe you too. Being connected to nature, being respectful of everything, every living thing, every sentient being. Let's get back to that. So however you can get back to that in the style of the Odam, the Yaqui, the Apache who are down in this area, use it in your life. Thank you.
I have the pleasure of introducing Stephen Ratcliffe this evening. Stephen Ratcliffe is the author of more than 20 books of poetry, including 2 books with Tucson's own Chax Press, a book of poetry called Painting, and a collection of letters with Barbara Guest. He's also published Rocks and More Rocks from Cuneiform in 2020, and Selected Days with Counterpath in 2012, which won the San Francisco State Poetry Center Book Award, as well as, of course, many other books. A scholar and a publisher, Ratcliffe taught at Mills College for many years, and he brings books into the world through his Avenue B press. He's also written 3 books of literary criticism: Reading the Unseen, Offstage, Hamlet from 2010, Listening to Reading from 2000, and Campion on Song from 1981. An amazing, I said this morning too, but an amazing investigation of a single song by Thomas Campion, and then an investigation into the whole aesthetics of sound and song. He's also, importantly for this space where we are, a surfer, a wave rider, a wave rider on mini planes. We were just talking about that at lunch today. Recently, Ratcliffe's work has been rooted in a durational daily practice that's documented on his blog Temporality, but it's also published in, at this moment, 7 1,000-page books: Moment, Human/Nature, Remarks on Color/Sound, Temporality, Continuum, with spaces between all the letters, Sound of Wave and Channel, Today, and Window. All of those are published and available online through Editions Eclipse, as well as other publishers, as these beautiful big books. The writing in these books emerges out of wherever he is and from whatever he has in front of him, which is nothing less than the particular everythings at any moment. He just shared with us what he wrote this morning here in Tucson, this morning when he and Will gave us a talk at the university. Ratcliffe is, like all of us language beings are, a thinker in sound, making sound systems out of the space of the page in the act of paying attention to everyday life and life every day. Here, light and vision become shaped, formed sound on the page, ready to re-emerge in the echo of reading. In his incredible book of essays on writers and their sounds, Listening to Reading, Ratcliffe takes up the work of many, many poets, including Lynn Heginian, Robert Grenier, Gertrude Stein, John Dowland, Thomas Campion, and many, many more, in order to understand, quote, writing as an act of mind playing with words across time and space that separates and connects them. These words are sound, and these sounds are echoes of sound as physical shape in our memory, on the page, and through the air. To listen is to list, as in list, pay attention. It's as in to attend, as in to give our perception over to something else outside us. We give it over to waves breaking in channel, to the train here in Tucson, which is going to pass surely during the reading, to cicadas, to traffic outside, and also, of course, to voices and to language itself. And to voices and to language itself, and those voices and that language, they do their weird continuous hum through us, and in the hands of a master like Ratcliffe, for us, and for the not us that is a world we make together. So please welcome Stephen Ratcliffe to our meeting. Thank you.
I got there. You're good. That's perfect.
Thank you, John. That's an amazing gift. Really great. Thanks for coming. This is one of the books that John was talking about called Moment. Cover image by my daughter, who's a painter in New York, Una, is a detail of a painting, but 1,000-page book. I'm going to read an excerpt. I have done readings with performances with musicians at Mills College out of the music program and from the Bay Area, and have gone on for 14 hours of reading. They're really long, and the music is being improvised, and I'm sort of the timekeeper. I have to keep reading the text, but. Very long works. So durational is a word that makes sense for sure. But you can see on the page that all the pages look the same. So there's this visual component, and you want to. It's upside down. Yeah. Anyway, I thought I would just read. I wanted to read the month of work, so you get a feeling of just what's going on from day to day, beginning on 9/18 and ending on 10/17. Is that today? Yeah, that's what I thought I would. Can you hear me? Should I?
Yeah.
Better? Yeah. You put on my.
You could probably raise that up if you need to.
Yeah, that might be good. Is there a turn? Somebody to sing, or can you just lift it?
Just pull.
Yeah. Let's see. Okay, move this back. So, do I need to speak into the mic?
Yes.
Better, yeah. Okay. I'll just read the date which appears and then what follows. These are probably all written where I live in Bolinas, California, which is on the coast. And the things that appear in here are things that are happening, as you said, nicely around, and also things happening in language that come into the poem. So we were listening to some Steve Reich music when we were coming in, and this kind of minimalism of repetition and this kind of ongoing, which in some way I think is going on here. 9/18. Light gray rain cloud against still invisible ridge. Sparrows standing on edge of shadowed redwood fence. Sense which follows and brings to light the absence, tension belonging to accident, consideration of same house built on the water, granite cliffs not eroding. Now that he is gone, she doesn't want to live there. Gray rain cloud against top of still shadowed ridge. Line of pelicans gliding to the left toward channel. 9/19. Light in cloudless blue sky above still black ridge. Waning white moon beside rose branch across from it. Concealed closure, ambiguous on the one hand, first person in water, sea level of everything at the edge, throwing a basket of flowers over railing into blue, blue sea, ship sailing en route Yokohama to Hong Kong. Pale orange of sky above shadowed shoulder of ridge. Pelican gliding to the left toward mouth of channel. 9:20. Light coming into blue blackness of sky above ridge. Waning white moon next to rose branch in foreground. Interval parallel to other based on two assumptions. This amount taken from any fixed start to end point. As poised, balanced on the point between one present thought surrounded by one penumbral feeling, another blinding whiteness of sun next to still black ridge, line of pelicans flapping to the right toward point. 9:21. Dream an unmade yellow and blue bed opposite window, walking across chaos of rocks where sand used to be. Color also correct, system according to procedures, still seen in series begins resting in a small room, feeling one has when a person comes in, walks around the far side of the room between you and its window. Bright circle of sun rising above shoulder of ridge, shadowed white wave breaking on sand beside channel. 9:22. Gray whiteness of fog against still invisible ridge, sound of birds chirping from branches in foreground. Done on the spot, did not return the sight of details. Everything ever thought would still be first of all. Man recalling a gout attack in Molokai, doctor gives oxycodone, makes everything just a little bit better. Gray whiteness of fog against still invisible ridge, edge of white wave breaking on sand next to channel. 9:23. Light coming into fog against still invisible ridge, faint white curve of moon through fog beside branch. Thought in part to open time, set back at the moment. Work basic subject matter, examines form and content, strangely resonant since it all takes place, present, always disappearing, becomes past soon as it happens. Gray whiteness of fog, still against invisible ridge, white line of wave breaking on sand next to channel. 9:24. First light coming into sky above still black ridge, upturned curve of thin white moon above pine branch. Then also place on the other hand concealed absence, calm about how from level to level various surfaces, pieces of glass embedded in man's left index finger, the body laid out on the table having been violated. Pale red-orange sky next to black shoulder of ridge, shadowed white line of wave breaking across channel. 9:25. Horizontal red-orange cloud above still black ridge, curve of waning white moon across from black branch. Different twice by the time it follows simultaneous point on line as function of time. Note first, second words going forth toward revelation itself as it is. Shapes can be written at the same time as what they say. Sunlit pink-red cloud above black shoulder of ridge. Line of pelicans gliding to the left toward channel. 9:26. Light coming into fog against still invisible ridge. Street sparrow walking across bricks beside fence. When young did not attempt later contrast to a self. 1 week goes by, shows room which contains a window. Woman recalling walking each day to school bus stop, followed by 2 goats called Mr. Johnson and Easter. Gray whiteness of fog, still against invisible ridge. Line of pelicans gliding to the left toward channel. 9:27. Light coming into cloud in front of invisible ridge. motionless black pine branches across redwood fence could instead be the fact which had served as model, noticeable measures of difference, nature of language. Example, for one thing, how last two lines transcribe something seen when out there in water at eye level. Gray rain cloud against invisible shoulder of ridge, diagonal white line of wave breaking across channel. 928. Blue, pink, yellow of sky beside black plain of ridge. Sparrows standing on edge of shadowed redwood fence. Preceding the making, even while suspend time's flow, these determined by external present form and color, recalling paintings by Rousseau, Vincent, and Cézanne, followed by Rothko, Still, Kelly, Matisse, Mondrian, blinding white edge of sun beside shoulder of ridge, line of 5 pelicans flapping toward mouth of channel. Now, moving
on.
Light coming into blue blackness of sky above ridge, wind moving through shadowed bamboo leaves by fence. Absence here beside concealed would be another name sometime, the level of the far side of less and less, each day events interwoven, nothing more than itself, insisting on hanging around beyond an ordinary life. Pale red-orange sky next to black shoulder of ridge, line of pelicans gliding to the left toward channel. 10:5. Faint whiteness of stars above black plain of ridge, motionless black bamboo leaves beside redwood fence. Follow in 2 scales made when applied to formation, calling in the direction of line, therefore in space. Apple isn't another apple over there, somewhere in real space, but has its own reality here on the page. Light coming into sky above black shoulder of ridge. Orange line of light on horizon across from channel. 10:6. Bright whiteness of star in pre-dawn sky above ridge. Sound of water falling on rocks in right foreground. Peace at every turn in contrast to beginning change sets out in the margin toward narrow part of room. Man in blue shirt, perhaps enough to materialize him. What lingers a while delays it, persist in hanging on. Sunlit red-orange corner of triangular granite peak. Shadowed green branches of trees on ridge beside it. 10:7. Pink-white edge of cloud above still shadowed ridge. Sounds of sparrows calling from field in foreground. Time of day and other shadows, figures to be thought. More not just saying, rather this one breath, another comes about on any page in the original translation. Seems to be happening in reading what is being said. Blinding white circle of sun and cloud next to ridge. Shadowed swell lines moving toward mouth of channel. 10:8. Gray whiteness of fog against still invisible ridge. Motionless green bamboo leaves beside redwood fence. Why it so often happens that after giving up a plan, extract from letter following an apparent beginning, imprint of living hand moving pen across page makes letters real as the physical things they talk about. Gray whiteness of fog against still invisible ridge. White line of wave breaking on sand next to channel. 10:9. First light coming into sky above still black ridge. Sparrows pecking up seeds from bricks in foreground. Reflection in far-reaching sight reveals it against one thinks about it, looking down on it, how far back, blue-eyed window moves towards something all at once, expanding the moment inside out into somewhere else. red-orange sky beside still black shoulder of ridge, shadowed swell lines moving toward mouth of channel. 10:10. Light pink edge of cloudless blue sky next to ridge, wind moving through bamboo leaves across from fence. Part of light which referred to different direction, there as is now seen, has points in common with line. Woman across table talking about moving toward edge, clear to horizon, light pink flower on blue ground. Cloudless pink-yellow sky next to shoulder of ridge, shadowed swell lines moving across mouth of channel. 10:11. First light coming into sky above still black ridge, motionless black pine branch by fence in foreground. All this work begins with a landscape painted, others where perpendicular, run down, far corner to end wall. Mixed up Robinson Crusoe narrative of a shipwrecked sailor who lived for years on small tropical islands. Orange circle of sun rising above shoulder of ridge. Line of 4 pelicans gliding across toward channel. 10:12. Light in window opposite unmade yellow and blue bed. Sound of crow calling on branch in right foreground. Early letter sketch of sand on paper, image just now, breath saying other than the rest of saying nothing. Sounds in themselves without relation to each other. One's being at home in words through world as sound. Blinding white edge of sun beside shoulder of ridge. Cormorants flapping to the right toward the horizon. 10:13. Moonlit blackness of sky above black plain of ridge. White circle of moon next to branches in foreground. Feeling of after all that matter of form from start, no longer possible to locate a copy of the original. Man writing VT green, NOV black, EMBER red, WOODS blue. Not pathetic, but pastoral fallacy, pretty well drawn. Gray blackness of sky above black shoulder of ridge. White circle of moon above clouds across from point. 10:14. Gray whiteness of clouds above black plain of ridge. Motion of shadowed green bamboo leaves across fence. Itself for and against, through which it falls apart. Physical spaces there relative to optical phenomena. Can almost see white, feel cold right outside window. Warm here in the house, what with fire still glowing. Sunlit white edge of clouds above shoulder of ridge. Diagonal white line of wave breaking across channel. 10:15. Light gray whiteness of fog against invisible ridge. Sparrows pecking up seeds from bricks next to fence. Green grass seen above, looking more and more. Things whose front and back is called the direction of. One thing followed by another, occupied with what is going on, days shorter, moving toward end of the year. Gray whiteness of fog against still invisible ridge. Line of pelicans gliding to the left toward channel. 10:16. Light in window opposite unmade yellow and blue bed. White circle of moon by clouds across from branches. Begins about between when he left, instead immediate, where ground verticals turn whole ceiling into room. Man on blue board dropping into wave, hits head, sand comes up, electric pain, neck, back, shoulders, fracture. Red, orange, yellow of clouds above shoulder of ridge. Wingspan of bird flapping to the right toward point. 10:17. Dream in unmade yellow and blue bed opposite window. Man tucking under breaking ledge of blue-green wave. Letter seen from above, pink tinge with violent water. Says the sound of word, which invisibly space, diagonal red-orange shaft of sunlight against ridge, sound of wave in still motionless channel, breathing, shadowed line of cloud in pale blue sky above ridge, wingspan of bird flapping to the right toward point. So, I guess that was a month of days passing. I don't, you could hear what is going on here. I don't know if there's time to read some other, we have some time, a little bit more? Yeah. This is, I also thought to read something completely different, but this is a book called Black and Yellow Notebooks. These were poems written on backpacking trips in the Sierras, which I've done a lot of every summer, going up there for years. And actually I did a long trip from above Bishop, California to South Lake to Mount Whitney, 120 miles, 30 plus years ago. And I was transcribing notes as I went in a little notebook, and when I got home I typed them up into a short line form. And I did another one of these last summer, which was, a whole different experience. But that in those poems, I was using a voice memo on my phone and just speaking these things, trying to keep the battery going. And when I got home, I typed them. But these were, these are the Black and Yellow Notebooks. Were 4 different trips up there, and I'm going to read I'm going to read the last one, which is, the dates are August 11 to 17, 2021. So this is like basically, I think of these as like walking meditations, like thoughts going, when you're walking, you're seeing things and thinking is going on and all this stuff. So I was just trying to record these events, internal and external, and there's a form here. Every line has 5 syllables, and there's no punctuation and there's no breaks. So, there's shifts of day into night and so on, but anyway, it's not too long. Light comes into sky, branches of trees, sound of water falling on rocks in foreground. Water so far down, dried out lake bed, gray, white thunderhead clouds building up in pale blue-white sky above triangular gray shape of granite peaks. Now the sun comes out, goes behind cloud, late afternoon, still pale blue-white sky above shape of granite peaks. Sun behind cloud, late afternoon, still blue sky, no sound to speak of, the empty air, 11,221 feet above sea level in the year 2021. Smoke from fires everywhere all over the West, burning 1 million acres, the so-called Dixie Fire, Northeast California. 2 towns destroyed yesterday, just like that one, up in smoke, wind-blown flames, embers of tinder, dry branches, dry as kiln-dried lumber, one firefighter said on the radio. What to do about it? Wind coming up, raindrops falling on tent, walls glimmer of lake below, flash of light, followed by distant thunder, far off peaks, wind building up, how everything changes, silver of sunlight reflected on wind rippled lake surface, rain falling from clouds above distant ridge, stillness in the air between here and there, the sound of thunder far away over there, getting ready to rain here, some wind picking up shaft of sunlight, dark gray cloud, shadowed granite peak in left foreground, sound of water on rocks, 2 small birds scatter left across pink rock, raindrops falling into ponds below them, thunderbolt peak against now gray-white clouds, pale blue across to the west above, distant shadowed ridge, granite peaks, black giant maybe rain falling out there, no wind, stillness as silent as can be, no sound, but some unseen small bird chirps in foreground, disappears into thin air, this place where one can simply be breathing in the air, and then out, rain stops, gray-white clouds in blue sky reflected in motionless surface, pond below, green grass, small purple flowers still blooming. Who knows what they are called? It doesn't matter at this point, but would be nice to know at some point. So here we go, rectangular gray granite boulder left behind by glacier still up there against higher gray-white clouds moving in from the west, maybe more rain somewhere out there, lines of words on Upper Barrett Lake, wind-blown, surface deep shadowed gray, green drops starting to fall now. Clouds open up, as they say, water running down tent walls, blowing in the wind. Sound of that song too, whose answer is there, my friend, getting wet, rocks and trees rolled round in earth's diurnal course, as Wordsworth once wrote, thinking of that. This moment, sound of jet passing disappears into clouds, above shadowed line of peaks, sunlit, lower edge of clouds above ridge, opposite it, peaks reflected in now motionless glass surface of lake, vertical granite wall across it, no sound other than breathing, least excited state of mind, eyes closing, reflection of peaks in still motionless Upper Barrett Lake, breathing in, breathing out, the next moment, alpine glow of light against those peaks, open 1/4 at a time, slowly everything goes on, waxing quarter moon across from planet, first star overhead, others coming out, maybe Perseid meteors tonight. Remember seeing one last night, bright white light streaking across blackness of star-filled sky overhead, then just as suddenly gone now, more and more stars, moon going down behind line of cloud above horizon, random arrangement of stars up there now, Little Dipper, North Star, Cassiopeia in her drifting chair, then a flash of light shooting east to west, 11:01, 10 minutes later, second one appears, moving in the same direction across blackness of night sky, disappears into now windless silence, up there and down here, bright green light below, closed eyes, sound of lake, water breaking on, shadowed granite, white granite, sound going on and on, continuous motion of wind-blown wavelets from far edge of shore, Mount Shakespeare against gray rain clouds, same triangular shape, one that one saw once before long ago, now seems being here, this same remote place, looking up at now, sunlit gray granite peaks, Palisades, crest, Mount Jepson, Mount Sill out of sight, behind it, Polemonium, up there, two down, whose slope one descended of to here, now the sound of Lake 11, 672 falling, otherwise silence of empty space, clouds moving in, maybe rain way out there to the west across Shakespeare, moving edge of white clouds slamming across blackness of night sky, triangular black peak below it, brightness of planet above ridge, no wind, no meteors, still middle of night, light rain falling on tent, no stars at all now, so much for weather, thoughts floating through mind, stationary front, clouds still overhead, below a few stars, black peaks in foreground, no sound of water, dark surface of lake somewhere over there below, Scimitar Pass, stepping across steep slope, hand on rock overhead, pulls loose, coming down, scraping across forearm, skin ripping open, bright red blood everywhere, waking up to see random arrangement of white stars in black night sky overhead, brightness of planet above tops of peaks low in the west, sound of water on rock, dream of foot slipping off rock on steep slope, waking up again to see Orion's shoulder, belt, and knee, rising above still black shoulder of ridge low in southeast sky. Hours later, black sky full of stars, planet still over there, wind blowing down mountain. That's that.
To quote another poet some of us love, how phenomena appear to unfold.
Oh, yes.
It seems like that's what we just heard.
Awesome.
That's by, from Leslie Scalpino, who is another person who triangulates into this space and into POG history somehow. I did not bring Will Alexander's biography of all the awards and all the books. There are many, including the big other Lifetime Achievement Award, but you can find that out. I do hope all of you find a way to get that book by Stephen. Whenever you get it, open it to that day, and then read one poem a day for 1,000 days.
Yeah.
Put it someplace where you can do that. If you didn't notice when you came into this room, you would have walked by a display of books, which include 2 books by Will Alexander, 1 book solely by Stephen Ratcliffe, and 1 book of the correspondence of Stephen Ratcliffe and the poet Barbara Guest. So on your way out, I hope you do notice that and go see those things. And the other books up there are, and a couple of others that are recent Czech press books. This morning I wrote down about 15 lines by Will Alexander and then about 4 phrases that I've just been thinking about. Of course, my name is Charles Alexander. Will has been known to say I am his namesake, and I have been known to say he is my brother. And he says in The Combustion Cycle, in a poem called Concerning the Henbane Bird, I am this bird. I am this aerial cacophony, this invisible nitrogen shaman cross-feeding like Indian natural farming. The beans, the squash, the white potatoes, the peppers, flying through Indian dromedary scents, such as Asiatic fuels, such as subconscious hierophanies, akin to beatific glissandos, flights through the lands of the Maya, the Opatas, the Aztecs, the Orotinas, alive in their depth with the comings and goings of ghosts through the sun. This is where Will Alexander lives, from the earth farming to birds in the air, to the stratosphere, to the sun. You'll see lots of places Will Alexander lives in Los Angeles, but he lives, I think, in places and times that are quite multiple. And those places or those times and certainly include our moment, which some have called the Anthropocene, which we are suffering through. But I'm glad I'm suffering with him through this. That henbane bird he writes about, and that poem began with I and I, but I is not just that bird, not just Will Alexander. but all sparks of intelligence, maybe all of matter, all of us speaking, or as Will states in his note, he attempts to, quote, connect this poetic endeavor with unknown beings that continue to propel the human diaspora. Connect. Now, one of the phrases I wrote was just one word, sharing. Because I feel like not only names shared, but Will shows everything to be connected and that we are sharing. You know, one thing I read a long time ago from the great poet Lintaginian, no, actually, I'm getting that wrong. Ron Silliman, I think, wrote this, that coherence is just an effect. But from Will Alexander, I'm starting to think everything coheres in ways we may not be able to be in touch with very often, in ways that are certainly we may not get our arms around all the time, but they connect and they cohere. And we're a part of that coherence. There's light that is part of that. In Will, there's light in the room in which he works, coming from a galaxy somewhere away. And those are the same thing. And the sharing of that light is where we all are. Will Alexander shares the light, which is a substance, not at all empty, with you, who are also this light. Please welcome Will Alexander.
Thank you for appearing this evening, and thank you for this morning when you came to our talk. And I'm going to attempt to share a few works tonight. Well, it's right now there's a little over 50 that have been printed so far. But anyway, I'm just going to not delve into any biographical crazy nimbus about this logistical moment and that logistical moment. But I'm just going to start reading from this work published about over a dozen years ago from New Directions. It's entitled, I read it this morning, A Nexus of Phantoms. In a lorikeet cave, motions exist of disintegrated swans in a translocated lake, brimming with harvested poisons, sealed by corrupted post-mortems, such as swans staggered by microbial reasoning, their aggressive nest anatomical with anomaly, with drifts of strenuous incarnadine leanings, with a thirst which hurdles conspiratorial invasives, allied with coronal oceanics, open like a clouded trail of rindings. Analogous with the auks, the pelicans, the mergansers, perhaps with the petrels and the gannets, under the power of darted mountain orations. The swans, looking back on solemn blood perusal, like a form of death breaking roses on a shore. It is the example of phonograms, of lost and compacted lenses, turning within a charismatic fall line, or an isoneph, or what an avian would announce in Greenland as a catabolic wind. The swans, like a haze of magnetism or implied gondola locations, where the form of each lorikeet is consumed and brought to dazzling eclipse refulgence. In another foci, in another depth, their form self-challenged in a cloak of suns. Their power is de-revealed with 7 moons burning, reduced to 2 intense incendiary magnets. And these incendiary magnets, like a nexus of phantoms, scattered across the geometric optometry. And I'll read the opening poem in this volume. It's a longer piece. We talked about the oceans earlier, but this is about a quantum sailor. And it's a longer piece, so just ride with me. It's called the Bedouin Arc. Repetition as de-existence, as condoned in respun vapor, which continues to post-exist as mirages across an arc, or as a lucid underwater scent. An arc with its compression of oars, with its one simultaneous scent over and above the simultaneous of movement. Its obliterated forms where the body of the captain reappears and disappears, eruptive with copias, schisms and salts, eruptive with copias, blanquillos, and starfish. Extrinsic and solstitial to any forewarned destination, to any leprosy or rupture or fragment. An arc at the same time betrayed and withdrawn through an index of phantoms, like a squall beneath a stunning alabaster tide, invigorated by pre-erupting persons within its hull, spawned by runic semen calendric, by fields of gnarled lava, predaceous orange-brown spider crabs feeding in diametrical coldness. The arc, now again visible to itself, amidst volcanic flamelets, fanning anonymous blaze of crushing underwater jade. The wind around its hull, a void of pusillanimous optometry, a shell of scorched bottoms, a mechanics exponentially concussive, like a solitary benzene, or an earthquake phylum, or a brittle scorpion typhoon. Because this arc, captained by scaleless ghosts, erupting their foundations from methane, from a sound with a stinging pottery of nerves, like murmurs from a hatchet well, scribbling maps, inducing subtractive protein on chemosynthetic shock waves of vertigo. So in the depths of bioluminescence, a void, a glassy conduit of ore, a propulsive cilia, a whip-like chimera, the captain scripting these events in a geomantic log concerning the brackish flare from his burning central body. A body below creatrix waters, a body below the simulation of trilobites, so that there constantly exists a smokeless anti-existence, which seemingly enshrouds a multiple quantity or a glare, much in the form of a stock and clay food stock, like a summoned explosive strife, which is the terra incognita, the fearful archaeology of fate. The arc, failing to illumine its former maritime amniotic by means of any purposeful or magic diathorsis, or any of the perplexing tonics of Selenia, or the Gorgonian as former body by persona, be it the pelvic whale or the caudal dolphin, the body of the captain, a blank, indeterminate ether, a smoldering solstice phantom, a soma beyond the depth of his former viewing range, superseding the diameter of boron, in the arc of the captain, conflagrant as anti-causality, which post-exists disintegration. The captain in possession of colorless Bedouin's blood, complex, burning, igniting light by carbohydrates. Then just quickly creating mass in a hydrozoic sea by means of insinuous noctiluca, inside the fire of diaphanous algae. The captain, as the voice of the dinoflagellates, as interior transvacuity, now translocated ember, a photonic beta-1 artery with a sudden grasp of stunning neural ranges, electrokinetic and spectral with maturity. He who now thrives without name, floating throughout inverted lightning hills. Perhaps his darting appellation is hexagrammity, or a goatfish burn, or a form which takes form within Peruvian gorillas. At the level of a subdivided spheroid, yet no longer partaking of the decigram or the quintal. In an unknown zone, such as the German East Pacific or Dutch Borneo peninsulas, like dark imaginary climates, floating beneath a fragment of broken imaginal isles, drifting beyond the confines of nodes or pharmaceutical calculus, being an incandescent distance in a zone like Lake Urmia or in the powers of Coco Nord. No longer of the realms of geometrical sirocco's, of prone and caustic emblematics, world now fallen into a cryptic bay of moons, far beyond the connivance extracted from the comma of the Paraguay rivers. Not a gnomic projection, nor a day's submission to generic engulfments, the captain no longer of an ashram of vectors, or a typographic geyser in the void. He exists at nervous solitary limits, his former vibrations obliquitous, vulpine, indigenous to the moisture of flashes. The Bedouin harp, an exploded viral dove, predacious anti-fixation, disappearing at the level of the leucoselenius. Then the sea wasp, the sessile medusas, the hydrozoan jellyfish, like obliterated hulls, like the eye and depolarized coronas, seeing susurras, seeing fire in the form of entangled isolations, in the arc of a neuron, in the spark of a dark infinity. So here we want to travel with this situation throughout all the moons and the stars. You know, there's an estimate that the Milky Way has 200, I think, billion galaxies. Goes up to about the whole billion. And we're talking about what's on America. And what's going on now. How long does human life live on this planet? The high range, we can be viable for some years, and here I am trying to do my best with dealing with the ravages of situations that I went through in my prior time getting to this book of form of stage 4. I got out of it. Here I am. Anyway, I don't want to dwell on myself, but as a conduit, we're getting poetry out. Really. So I'll jump around, not jumping around, but I had this new book come out from Second Study Press in San Francisco. And this is brand new. It's called Interior Philosophical Fractals. But we found out from a scholar in Michigan that the original fractals were pursued in West Africa, not in Mount Abroad. That's how we come to know it, but we're talking about a wider array of worlds, so much that the rubric of America is subjected to the rest of the world. But we found out that America was basically founded psychologically at the University of Gothenburg, I think, in Germany, 1671, a little before the so-called American Revolution. And at that point, all the former Scottish, Irish wars, all these things that coalesced and collapsed into an American identity. So, right now, I think as poets, we struggle against that identity with the imagination going beyond limited quarters. So, anyway, I wanted to start off with, these are shorter pieces. It's called Unscrambled Concentration for Yarding Cats. I don't know if anybody knows yarding cats. He understands the situation with the AI is trying to consolidate a ripeness in American culture which can't persist. But we're just bombarded with it. It reminds me of the scholar or priest that used to harangue Renaissance audiences. Savonarola. Anybody ever heard of him? They got Savonarola. They used to listen to him, he'd run his mouth, they hung him. They hung him. And so, it might remind you of what we're dealing with now. But this is regarding cats. I was able to get in his vicinity. I didn't meet him, but I wrote this poem for him because of his insight into AI. And I've been reading this book about the formulation of AI that took place, say, in 1980 to the present day, and how it's attempted to evolve. But it's not a natural formation. It's like a scholar from Senegal, Sheikh Anta Diop, says, nature only strikes once. It has to be natural. And this is not natural. It's trying to conscript a reality. And so this is from my latest book on, as I said, on interior philosophical fractals. AI as misarticulated horizon, as counter-articulation soars into blurring beyond the Turing confine that the crudity of 1950 confined to seeming abstruse domination by mazes by confinement, to null and refractive active voidness, always empty, never principally of Abayala and Congo, later inferring to principal limitlessness and richness, never dazed by opacity, by day's grainness, by day's grammar that naturally elucidates itself beyond pauseless disbelief. AI all the while know by scrambled concentration. We're dealing with right now an era of scrambled strain to get it, but I wrote it in the vicinity of the great architecture of space out there in the San Gabriel Valley. I'll mention it right now, but the great astronomical lodge there. But they didn't ever know I was writing this, doing this Arctic astronomy at that time. But as long as it works, that's what I'm looking for, is something working and penetrating the audience via sound vibration. So what I'm trying to do is do sound vibration here. And it's an odyssey being a poet, because you go through all kinds of changes that are mostly invisible. But I've recorded all my parallels and ups and downs as much as I can in silence. I'm taking it in storage to let yourself alchemically bruise as a misfit on this planet. That's alchemical brewing. This presentation tonight is alchemical brewing. I'm not trying to impress this audience, but just to communicate. So this was from my second book that had gone missing for many, many years. I wrote this book before my Asia and Haiti volume, before all the books I have here. But it's been an odyssey. Poetry drives you in silence, and drives you through despair and misarticulated pronouns. One becomes a misapplied pronoun in living. So one has to absorb all of that and spew out the poisons and spew out an alchemic kind of listening of one's ear. So this was a great adventure. It went from my desk to a person that said he was going to publish it and disappeared from New York to Berlin. I got it back, and we got it back to New York, and we got it back to myself, and then it was eventually published in Wales. This book is from Wales. So I've been trying to work with planetary resonance just by the way it happened. And this was about painting, abstract painting. I was interested in Robert Motherwell and great Peruvian abstractionist, Bisislo, Fernando Bisislo. You may or may not have heard of him. I met him once, a couple times. Amazing, he had an interesting life. He fell down steps with his wife and just disappeared. Went into an audio, fell down. He and they died together. And I met both of him and his wife in front of his paintings. And they just turned to this poem. So, first time I've ever laid eyes on this book in many years. It's called The Dust of Green Infinity Calipers. A voluptuous nightingale of rum, solar osmosis causing moon pressure, streams of yellow tar morph to darken camphor. Enjambment embracing me with the dust of green infinity calipers, being an art of ghostly cunning, being scores and scores of manipulated Edens, being demonic crosses ingrained in your complication via a darkened valley of diamonds, not unlike an eel that swims through an arch of sound like a cassowary magnet, burning like a golden sun underwater, beneath a dietetic arum, being cobalt samsaras, tied to inky eyelid astonishment. We're always working with astonishment. Once we can get beyond the quotidian, we are always grafted by astonishment, even as we live. As we get beyond the advertising cycle and the mismanaged induction of, what was the gentleman's name, cousin of Sigmund Freud, the father of advertising, 1923. I don't think it was his name. Bernays, yeah. So getting beyond that spell by writing, me getting beyond that spell, no matter what I see on the television magnification. I'll just read randomly from this area. Sweet as condensed arrangement. Volcanic nuclear spirals scattered around the planet, alive as excruciating wind, as flares become nothingness of the mind, as indecisive transmission, as stunning optical blizzard, as seismic nothingness become the electric power of seismic ithosarias. Moraine being an elliptical river of lightning and glass, being the seismic needles protruding, being spasmodic frothing of albino contusions that crackle as obsidian reflections. Trying to get to the state of affairs of a magnification of abstract painting. I've been fortunate to work with an artist you may or may not know, in Los Angeles, we were doing this giant thing from, what's that press? Granary Press in New York. It's 900 pages in 3 volumes. And he's got all of the work, the visual work, and I've named every one of the 327 entries of the book. And we have them, it's too big, it's much bigger than his book, but they go about that big. But anyway, all that aside, one has to keep working all the time. One can be straddled by exterior arrangements, praises and this and that. And that's only for the moment. We're going to get to the beyond the moment. This is called, I'm really waiting to read this one, but yeah, just come on this as I speak to you. This quaking saurian rivulet, pale trout, flooded indigo spider, never condensed as analytical. Chariot as quaking saurian rivulet. In the wind of its quaking brush fire canals, with its oroporic stellar antimides, with its non-existent retinal penetration, being optics of greenish bone reverses. Perhaps an eclipsed transparency, opaline registrations as spells of bodiless evolutionary vistas, being a fumarole of transparency, being juggled infinity, asteroidal in origin, like the amber of a lion's brood, condensed as underground saurian arrangement, being abyss as solemn stumbling, akin to central thickets of the sun, alive as forage waterfalls, saliva, as perfect muscular suspension. It blazes as spectacular uranium, terrific as obsessional rhodopsin ballet. I'll read one more small one for this poem. It's called Texas Blind Salamander Feelings. By the way, the salamander, Texas Blind Salamander, hasn't been shown in the world in Texas since 1952 when we found a living one, but it's born blind. It sees with other ancillary transmission. So as an abstract person, I'm looking at ancillary states of transmission. I don't want to talk about what happened in the hood. I could talk a lot about the so-called hood. I grew up in 116th and Avalon. I didn't just escape, but I transmuted myself to this space. Wasn't easy, but here we are. My mother stopped a hanging on the street. She's amazing. Berby Alexander, she's amazing. She gave me poetry, the bravery of poetry. Although she was not a scholar, but she worked with intuition. She could find out things that nobody was supposed to know. That's how she baked bread. No recipes, no arrangements, just came out beautifully. And see, hopefully she's coming out beautifully. And I never talk about them too much, although they're the reason for me being here. And this is called On Pre-Cellular Audition. Not as meandering kinetic, not as stationary nexus, not as a planetary water plantation, perhaps as raw metrical hydrogen by oblique dissonance, by raw territorial posture, by crystallized territorial charting, as ostentatious solar current, or systemic via wisdom, or omnidirectional stagnation, as prevalent stationary scale, revolving by prior state as deoccurrence, as shaken spectral haven, a blank combustive cinder, by diagnosis of script that endemically rises via plentiful regulation, by kinetic imprinting, perhaps scripted tentacles as malleable silver cascade, being outer grams within fractionated human presence that registers its own drifting. By the way, we're all drifting to the cosmos right now as we speak. It's going at the rate of, we can't feel it, it's going at 280,000 miles an hour. And then it turns into the next day. We're magical species on a magical plane. We gotta start acting like it. Using great language to try to get things, not didactically, but we're looking at a deteriorating Hamlet here. We're not trying to reverse it, but we're going to let it change into another space where the seas become vibrant. The ocelots begin to tingle. We're going to mention all the ways that our magic proves. By the way, the work of the ancient Egyptians was superior to the work of the American economy. 5,000 years ago was way more advanced in this situation. But we have this triangle of subversion that's trying to regulate the mind to such a low diameter of voltage. Maybe we can blame Mr. Descartes for that. I think, therefore I am. But it's beyond that. I am before I think. So I'm going to read a couple lines from this poem, from this book, Refractive Africa, was finalist for the Pulitzer about 3 years ago, something like that. I don't remember. But I'll read just a few lines here about Amos Tutuola, the great African writer, West African writer, who worked in schoolboy notebooks, not unlike Antonin Artaud, used to write in school notebooks. And the thing is coming from the inside out. I don't have all the galaxies of emendation of who I am and what I've done. It's what comes out from the alchemy of what has brought me here. Having risen above dubious salt infernos, the absence of rules in your blood, never extended into doctrinal edicts, you, Tosuwala, comparable with cosmic infra forces, with wheat that blazes, rife with its own combustible flame. You, all the while, roam the anarchic as ozone, as region, as dark interior hollow of strife. You wandered through night vacuums, what some would call anarchic jubilation, simply blinded, seemingly spun by discomfort, by winds which sprung up and menaced, by forces which summoned themselves through attrition. Amos, you were not a corpse sculpted out of ash, but vehicular anonymity as voyage, as physiology summoned from unnameable tension. This remained your creed, your example, your ability to singe, to stumble as blaze through incitement, to invade a sigil through raucous tipping points. These are forces you continue to breathe, being powerful towers of smoke that remain chronically unfiltered as the high symbology of the inscrutable. As if you had invoked exhaustive sands, squared at the root by a corroborated cinder, by corruptive intensification. So that as births occur, they immediately exhaust old bulletins of calcium, and all of them claim extrinsic home and hearth, being torrents reversed and unleashed as burning rams, as geometric sorcery that equate themselves with the charisma of slippage. And this charisma tutuola converges upon your extremities as if a flare from perfect hydrogen had been squared and left askew, eschewing strictly numbered meridians. This gnawing contradiction, the gale of vines brewing new and incongruous burning, being suddenly crystallized, contagion hovering as a bulletin of grimness, conjuring funereal ambrosia as if it had capsized in figments in hollow emotional aggression, as you charted the dead as a perfect stenographer of ruin. You possess that capacity to scramble yourself through forms, to reconnoiter dust, to ride upon this and that species of wool, to conjure taxonomic carrion that loosens its hyphen in a lake of ephemera. And so you fully floated inside death, inside its innominate spiraling, listening to a tornado of calories, dazed, alive as alarming misnomer, as renewed and terrifying entrapment. You lived as naked metakinetics who understood as mode and concern, each exclusive form as doppelganger. There are some who have lived, who possess no known form as the pointless juncture of physical dialectics. So being the realm where the great sun darkens, where mirages deepened and reinvented themselves by immaculate repetition, that were no longer figments, no longer the brooding animation expressed by seasonal regalia. Perhaps you formed in yourself a curiously embraced agenda, being extraneous agenda, as new and increased forces of strength that spiral and made as mazes, being other than palpable tempo, other than chronic tenses that merged conduction with stasis. No, this was fluid without marking, without bounds, sans the dwelling and corruption that was Lagos. Hence, you were free amongst the dead, roaming into roamed signals, sending signals, empowering your own description as via the omic. As animus, you knew that nothing could be quarantined, that nothing could be conveyed to the torrentially gangrenous, to the Western finance model. Yet you work from arcane occlusion, united by a regular ghost, by a range of blizzards that concealed beyond rays, in your ash, a deafening, legendary blizzard, where human statues were immobilized and scattered, where grains ignorantly cooked in totemic pots of ice, where the sun reversed and sank and shone without shining. Tutuola, another epic, with tenuous inner navigation, in your eyes beamed with inscrutable penetration, their cognizance procuring from post-mortem findings filigrees of hydrogen, therapeutic hydrogen glossolias of straw, from which you mined preternatural stumbling, from the danger of advanced mirages, as in your seventh house, your ghost, with its darkened chakras, with its power of snakes and vermin, never to be conveyed to the worker, emboldened by the trance of bureaucracy. I'll leave it at that. And I'll try to conclude with one of my, they call it my magnum opus, this baby here got published by Root Books, James Sherry. And I wrote this in the early part of the what century we are now? We are at 21st. I'm sometimes scattered, but I'm not. Sometime during that period of 2001, 2002, 2003, I wrote all this book in libraries without internet. So I dedicated this again to my mother and father, Will and Bertie, my genetic co-authors. All right, there's a quote from, anybody know Sri Aurobindo? Okay. The mother, his partner in life. And the mother says, absolute fearlessness is required because at every step, at every second, you must wage war against everything that is established. And we must. We talk about cellular revolution. I'm interested in cellular revolutions, not mathematical or social revolutions. I am interested in those things. These are things that occur naturally in the cosmos. When you start reading the cosmos, get transmissions from the cosmos, you see how the cosmos is brewing. It's a mystery. Dip into its waters. Poison. Mystification by poison. No. Life is seminal cladistics, not prone to involuntary slumber or to the eye of measurable destruction, but the equidistant barriers surmounted as movement through centripetal transparency, like a flask of mirrors as it disintegrate in rotation. Incessant as cylindrical magenta inside the black vertiginous eye, never ceasing to vibrate, so that I am diaphanous, conspicuous, less given to accessible opulence or distortion by skiography, as if inside the Andes is the fuel of an interior lightning subspecies as an arc, as the sun on a tribulus ruby, not being subject to tribes or genera or toxins. But as shamanistic hill star, I'm nevertheless subject to an iridescent stillness, to faultless hurricane taxonomy, being the flight that is vaporous cleanse of individable and individable as transfusion. Molecules as ghost, my genetics in absentia of the avian, I am the pre-existing hill star, collapsed into form. I am obscure, a proto-endemic as voltage like a sun minus saffron as weight, aligned with the first Vulcanian satellites rising from ghostly eruption. There are three never subject to cylindrical zones to exponential weight. I am sunless, according to scribes who pored over text in Chaldea, who negated various works of salt. According to sound by inverse rotation, according to mountain chains, according to various beasts before and after gravity was founded as law. The law implied and imploded as the various dimensions of surcease, making me sullen and untoward, climatological and veriform. Therefore I merge and cease to merge with manifestation and its ripeness. One could call my wing beats aloof, my presence, three suspended suns anterior to shining. Anterior to promulgation is mass, anterior to the quavering of hawks. One thinks of titans whose glory is translucent, whose voids are akin to weightless hovering funnels. And this is not to condone a monolithic sacrifice body, but to fully engage a transcendental speech as a swan emitting sounds, whose fundamental gift is disorder. I could go on and on, but it goes, travels to over 600 pages, so I don't want to burden you with that and the
I'm up
rest.
for that.
Huh?
I'm up for it.
I don't think I am right now. Thank you guys for hearing this. Thank you.
We are going to ask the post back up and answer at least a couple questions if you have them. But I also wanted to say we're going to be back in just 3 weeks or so, only at the Steinfeld Warehouse with a poetry event that is a memorial and tribute to the great Alice Notley, who died several weeks ago. And that date, November 8th, which is a Saturday night, would have been her 80th birthday. So we're celebrating her on that day. I know there's a literary translation event happening that weekend too, but it's over by that afternoon, and some of those people are going to join us too. And so we hope you join us too. Will, Steven, you want to come back up and answer a question or two?
Should we get a couple chairs up there?
Oh yeah, you can sit.
Thank you.
And John, you
I
want
just
to
want to say something.
move the microphone or something?
I just want to say, these poets are from California, the edge of the Western world. California has always brought us insights into another, more Eastern perhaps, or otherworldly dimension, and I just wanted to throw that out there because it is the edge of the Western world, and you describe it so beautifully, and you're already there, so thank you, thank you. Thank you.
I don't know if this will pick all this up or not, but we'll see. Try.
Try it out.
Closer to the mic. Do we-
So I know these moments are awkward sometimes.
Poems are awful.
Sometimes these moments are awkward when you come up with a question, but whatever you want to say. Anybody?
I don't know if it's a question, maybe it's a statement, probably incomprehensible for Stephen. Actually, it does fit both of you, but I always have this idea about writers and their writing and how every writer has a sentence, which is not necessarily a sentence. It's more of a sound or an arc or a shape. And that shape, you write, keep writing. If you're really, I aspire for this, but if you're really, really good, you and the shape of your writing become the same. And no matter what work you make, that you can feel it in the work. And I think you two are both folks who are actually doing that. And I wonder if you had any comment on it.
It's like a shamanistic trance
Exactly.
across light. And it's been going volume after volume. That's why I read from different volumes. That river is flowing through this poetry is continuous irrigation. And it always surprises one. All the time I'm working. Like sometimes I'm in the middle of reading and words will come to me for other things. But you know, the river is such a torrent that it carries the aphorism, the novel, non-fiction, philosophy, all those things are part of the world one inhabits. It's very private, and as René Guénon says, there is a modern hatred of secrecy, but the poet must embed secrecy in order to get his or her work established as a voice.
Yeah, I hate thinking about the voice. I mean, I just want to chop my voice up into pieces, but what's so nice for me is it's indelible. It's like I could go anywhere and open a book and read something you wrote, and it would have that shape, sound, I don't know, the sentence.
Yeah.
That doesn't, it's not a sentence.
It's DNA.
You know, yeah, it is like DNA. It's a form of embodiment that also is a form of language.
Well, there's a really interesting statement that you started out with, and Will, in his amazing way, had a complete take on it. But it's a mystery in some way, but there's this sense of the human and the body and being in this place. You know, here we are, and then there's words and language, and which the poems are made out of letters and words, and they're written on pages, and there's this kind of transmission. You use that word a lot, but there's a transmission from the person, flesh and blood, and physical body,
And landscape,
and-
the way the landscape gets inside of you, and so when you start writing about it, it's inside of you, but you're also inside of it, and that's part of what makes that
yeah,
DNA. I mean, it's
Yeah.
really clear in your work, especially the moment where you're looking, where you're like it's space-based and place-based,
yeah,
but those things are now interior.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, it's, I
Okay.
mean, what you led off with was a really, sort of, wow, moment.
I didn't mean to
Yeah.
be wild, sorry.
No, no,
I
but-
wanted to know, it's just
Yeah.
such a thing.
Well, there's something about the words come out from somewhere, and they're being transmitted to the page through the person, and we write, but there's something more that's mysterious about what's happening.
And I guess I also think, when I think about this, which I do quite a bit, I also think about how the words come out of the person and then reshape the person in a particular way, which also has to do with their sentence, if you want to call it that.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
okay.
The way you describe things. The great Yves Bonfoy, the great French poet, he uses in his first book, Sangam, a lot. But every time he uses it, it's different. It comes to him in a different way. You can pick that up. So you're not repeating yourself, but you're just inscribing not the hallucination, but the understanding of the mantra. And once you get into the mantra, you get into all these overdrafts of sound, places that you didn't think you were going to go at. This is why poetry is a real mystery, even to myself, or anytime I hear it, it's a mystery.
Yeah.
How did he or she get this done? Like,
Yeah.
long passages. Mr. Stephen's work. It's like you continue to grow. You have to do that internally, almost like a meditation. Like Octavio Paz says, he would write. He would read at least a poem a day as a sacred measure. Anytime one wants to look at that poetry, look at The Bow and the Lyre. It was written in 1956. Very interesting because it's a timeless book. The way that poets get into all these constellations, they're not segregated from one another, but they are, on superficial levels, they're segregated into forms. But poetry has to be touched in each form you're working with. Because I work with the aphorisms, all forms. But plays, they had to be touched by the poetic.
I think that, in pursuing the arts, the person works in a medium. The painter works with color and canvas and inks and line. The musician, composer works with sound of notes, music. Dancers work with their body. And the writer works with words. So there's something about the medium that it's being channeled through the person writing, and the person has some control and doesn't have other things. Things come up, and there's a vocabulary of language in my work. These words keep coming up because it's part of
who I am and where I am, the person and the place are totally connected. Will's work is really different from mine, I think, but there's something of the same thing going on. You know, Charles in the intro said, you know, people say Will Alexander lives in Los Angeles, you know, this great line about he lives in the cosmos, you know, you went up, up, up and out. So, but I mean, you know, it's making use of the language it's, you know, the medium of the words, the letters, and that's kind of what we do. Yeah,
Understand.
yeah, yeah,
Thank you.
thank you.
I wrote down a question. Earlier you were discussing frequency and how you hear in between other frequencies and how you attune to the frequency. And then my question was like the veneer of sound, like maybe the veneer of the frequency and what components exist, like what constituents like exist within that surface or with that veneer. And then what, like, when you were mentioning like an alchemical process, like perhaps how does that veneer and the ingredients of that move through, and then how does it metabolize or catalyze in that expression?
You can't do this cognitively. You have to do it endemically from the inside. That's what the alchemy of language does for you. As Eric Dolphy once says at the end of Last Day, sound, words to that effect, sound, this music is magic. He says you can never capture it again. It has to be that form of magic that you're not capable of getting your head around. And that's a hard art to do this in this kind of culture where you're dealing with an internet with all kinds of boat excursions and, you know, super colliding black holes. It's enough to rock you, but you have to get into that I call it lingual equilibrium of volcano of the voice. Once you get into that lingual equilibrium, you're always focused naturally. There's nothing that throws you off course. So in other words, you absorb rather than contest. To absorb your reality. You don't change. You change reality by absorbing and exfoliating this magic that one encounters along the way. I don't know if that answered your question, but like every moment I'm working on something. I'm working on what we're talking about now, but you know, moments from now, or 2 years from now, or 2 years prior, you continue to burn these alchemical forces inside of your forge all the time. Sometimes it gets you in trouble with the quotidian world, but I try not to let that bother me.
Yeah, I was going to ask, we're going to follow up on that. You know, if you're in trouble with the quotidian world, like what does ritual mean to you? And how, you know, I was thinking about it's a daily practice. It becomes a kind of ritual. We're in a space right now. It's a kind of ritual. Because you're talking about shamanism and poetry and hearing at a distance. And so I'm just curious what ritual means to you and how it relates to
No,
poetry.
ritual is all important because it's part of one's practice.
Yeah.
That's what it has to do. You're meditating on language as a mantra.
I think, but the ritual is something that is performed, and there's a sacredness about ritual. And if part of your work, you know, as a person is writing, then there's that, for me, it's like this writing daily activity is definitely, it's like a rite. I mean, I haven't thought about it as ritual, but it is something that has that kind of practice and aura about it. Yeah. Ritual. Worship.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was wondering if we were going to go there. I mean, you know.
Well, I mean, I would definitely go there. Yeah. And it gives you a kind of sense of all chaos breaking loose around us, and the world is, you know, in the political world, and there's so much going on, but there's this path that one is on. And it's like a compass.
keeps you balanced, and it gives you a place where going through this chaos that we're living in. Charles mentioned, and that we're aware of, all of us. But we in this little space. It's not here. It's out there. Yeah, it's interesting.
Ritual in that sense seems to partake of the same kind of magic Dolphy's talking about too.
Yeah.
Maybe allows it.
Yeah.
Octavio Paz has this poem called Wind from All Compass Points.
Yeah.
But he's concentrated on all these compass points and rises above all the winds to reach the excellence of the poetic utterance. The excellence of poetic utterance.
It's a practice and a praxis. So it's like something that one can get engaged with and begin to commit to, or continue, and then it's like constantly evolving and unfolding. But there's a purpose. There's a purpose to this madness.
There's a method to his madness.
A method to this madness. Horatio.
I'm not sure how this fits, but I have to say it. I was listening to this Buddhist podcast this morning, and they're talking about how to maintain your balance in the force of all sorts of crapola that comes at you, and distractions and everything. And instead of trying to avoid it, run away, bury it, ignore it, let it come, and know that you stand in your spot, and this stuff, here it is.
Yeah.
And not trying to react to it, change it, and just let it be there.
Yeah.
And that deepens your own sense of you're here.
Yeah.
And you have what you have. And I'm hearing that in what you're both describing.
Well, it's like being on a path, and there's all this chaos and things that are beyond our control, but I'm thinking, we're always thinking about what's going on in America. You keep talking about that in the reading you did, but there's a kind of a focus that makes for a kind of salvation.
Yeah.
Really,
There's a
it sounds. I don't want to put
Yeah.
a bigger framework, but there's a kind of way of being guided along on a path that you commit
The
to.
grace of language.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. It has to do. For us, it's language. It's the medium.
The grace.
Non-quotidian concentration.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. You talked about the quotidian, and then there's this other thing that we're talking about
Yeah,
here. Yeah.
And they're simultaneous, but all have to say things have got to rise. How long did King George stay here on this planet? Here we are in that state. That's just inevitable. It's not political, that's just inevitable situation in the cosmos. Cosmos is a magical state. As I mentioned in the reading, there's a sun they've discovered. It's called Stevenson 281. And it goes out beyond, if we measure the sun in this solar system, it goes out beyond the episode of Saturn. It works like that. And the sun, this sun is just a dangling little pebble. So we're in an astonishing world. We're working with astonishing, I try to stay around astonishing beings like Mr. Ratcliffe here.
You sound like Alice Coltrane. I'm sorry. No, in that beautiful.
Yeah.
I mean,
You
she
use your hands.
displayed
And,
that.
yeah. You display that, the opening.
Just-
We form all kinds of spontaneous conclusions and episodes in our life once we're on a path of understanding. So,
Path of understanding. It's nice.
That's
Yeah.
nice.
Yeah, everyone's on a journey.
we're all on a journey, so, it drives me nuts when people put it as put it as episodic, and one's above the other, and this and that. We're all doing this. We're trying to do the same thing. This is the great jazz musician Charles. I guess it was Charles Tolliver. No, Billy Harper. Trying to get ready for the cosmos. That's what the religious statement is about, the cosmos. It's not in a dimensional building or something like that, or an episode in Arabia or Pakistan or Guyana. But magic is happening everywhere at once. I was fortunate to have a meeting with, when I read at Harvard a few months ago, I was able to have a private audience with Avi Loeb. He's amazing. There was a lot of stuff. He's understanding that we're in something that this 3-eye comet, he understands it to be a spaceship coming from some other galaxy. We don't know where it originated from, but it's going through our situation. They're flying around Mars as we speak right now. Maybe we'll see it on the Earth coming up in a few days. But we're in a magical cosmos now. We've gone as far as we can go to rational limit. We're breaking into another kind of, what I call another transmundane reasoning. So we're here in these new shapes and these new forms. Just happy that I can participate in all this with all of you. You know, go out to the galaxies, lingual galaxies. You guys are allowing us to travel to other lingual galaxies. So that's what we're trying to do. Thank you guys for the allowance of this situation.
Yeah.
Can I ask a question? Can you give a couple of just, can you each give a couple of just basic instructions for like generative creative practice, or I guess, yeah, are there some like key instructions that you would recommend or that you hold dear?
Get into sound.
Get into sound.
Magic of sound. John Coltrane, Eric Dolphin, people like that. Or, you know, we can get into other levels like Ravi Shankar or Indian music. Getting into that multiple trances. Trance state. You can come through that kind of medium, can come through a lot of mediums. Through nature, but get into that sound so you can not match that sound, but let that sound evolve into your language.
One of my books that I think came up this morning in the class, but it's called Sound, and there's a slash and parenthesis system. And I was really thinking of that Bob Marley song on the sound system, Marley. But the poem is a sound system. And we think about like what's the content, what are you saying, what happened, it's like but if you think about the writing that you're doing as sound, that kind of shifts what the focus can be. And it's not the content that's driving at us, but the sound of opening up possibilities.
Thank you.
Yeah. Great question. Yeah.
I think of the poem also as an intonation. Intonation.
Yeah.
And when Will talks about Indian music, that's a different intonation.
Yeah.
South Indian, very low guttural singing, or Mongolian throat singing is a different intonation. And if you could just imagine that, and it has possibilities as poetry, you'll do something interesting.
Also, words carry sound, and on the page they're just print. But if you realize that when we read tonight, we were putting the sound of the words out into the air, and it gets transmitted, invisibly as acoustic sound, and the poem has a physical shape on the page, but it has an acoustic shape in the air. when it's read aloud. And that's an identity in the poem that isn't the same thing as what's on the page, and it isn't the same thing as the content of the words or the meaning of the poem. It's the music of the poem. And that's like a key feature of the poem. Prose too, of course, everything has a different, but there's that sense of, I think, the poet to be aware of sound is useful. Yeah, opens up stuff.
Yes, magical.
Yeah.
Sri Aurobindo put it, the great Indian yogin, knowledge by identity. You merge with the identity of the work, of your existence through getting into the identity of language. Using your own language not as some kind of ploy, but as a way into the universe. And somebody is given, very few writers like Conrad go from Polish to another language. But Eliot tried it, but didn't work out so well. But not to use another language as an impressive feat, but as an alchemic feat. Using language as an alchemic feat. So Lorca and Bertin never knew a foreign language, but what they wrote is magnified across the planet. What you want to do is magnify life across the planet, language across the planet. So it looks like a deficit on a superficial level, but in reality, because you hear so deeply, you can hear what's going on. I was friends with Philip Lamantia, and he was telling me that he and Bertin was speaking English, excuse me. Philip was speaking English and Bertin was speaking French, but the vibration pulled them together into this level of the miraculous. That's great. So that's how we hope to communicate. If there's no more...
Thank you.
Thank you so much.